And I'm going to try to give a kind of a history of partnership and mission in the Redemptorist congregation. It's spotty, not complete. There's things that I don't know, so they're not in here, that kind of thing. But I'd like to begin with the words that we used at the beginning of our opening prayer service on Thursday afternoon. Redemptorist life has never been possible without the support and encouragement of lay people, associates, benefactors, and friends. As we Redemptorists have touched and changed the life of the Church, so we have been touched and changed by the people with whom and among whom we have been called to minister. In every place and at every stage of our history, we've looked for ways of joining with lay women and men in mission to more effectively proclaim the good news of plentiful redemption to those who most need to hear it. So that's what this is all about. I'm going to start with the time, and a lot of this is things that have been mentioned kind of along the way, and this pulls at least some of it together. I'm going to start with the time of Alphonsus and Clement. Even before the founding of our congregation, St. Alphonsus carried out his ministry in partnership with lay people. Maybe the most powerful example of that is the evening chapels in Naples. To quote from a famous doctoral dissertation, when they were clerical students, Alphonsus and some like-minded friends began a catechetical ministry among the destitute poor of Naples. They enlisted laymen and women, often unlettered, and trained them as catechists. These teams held evening catechetical sessions in the alleys, storefronts, and back rooms of the poorest neighborhoods. Some of the names of the leaders have been preserved in the writings of Alphonsus and his early biographers. Thus, we now recall Pietro Barbese, Luca Nardone, Bernardino the cowherd, and Leonardo, who sold chestnuts on the streets, as early partners in mission. Anne, she's the author, drives her point home with the comments that before there were professed Redemptorists, there were partners in mission.
I've never been a footnote before.
Cool.
I like this.
In 1785, Clement Hofbauer and Thaddeus Hübel, the first Redemptorists from outside of Italy, returned from Rome to Northern Europe with the mandate to establish the Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer beyond the Alps. That mandate was not actually fulfilled in the lifetime of Clement. However, in the two cities where strong beginnings were made, it was done in collaboration with lay people. The two cities were Warsaw and Vienna. In Warsaw, actually, Peter told you more about this than I'm going to say right now. In Warsaw, Clement and Thaddeus were given charge of St. Benno's Church, where they set up what came to be called the Perpetual Mission. Besides daily Mass, prayer services, and catechetical preaching every day, they also opened primary schools and trade schools for boys and girls. That obviously called for large numbers of lay co-workers, as well as new Redemptorist recruits. When Napoleon invaded Warsaw in 1808, the Redemptorists were expelled. The confreres from Warsaw were scattered far and wide throughout Europe. Clement went to Vienna, where he was first assistant priest at the National Italian Church from 1808 to 1813, and then rector of the Ursuline Convent Church. Clement was a very popular preacher in Vienna, and he attracted a growing group of students, academics, artists, soldiers, and merchants. Clement began to meet with this circle of people to do what we would today call adult faith formation. From that so-called Vienna circle, a whole generation of Catholic lay leaders, as well as professed Redemptorists, emerged. They led a revival of Catholicism in Austria and Bavaria. From the laymen and women who worked most closely with him, Clement formed a group of Redemptorist oblates. That's initially what oblates were about. As we heard, it, through our history, it kind of evolved into an honorary thing than an actual thing. In North America, the Redemptorists came to North America in 1832. As they got established and organized, they also quickly began to work in collaboration with lay people. Across North America, lay people have been involved in the promotion of devotion to Our Mother of Perpetual Help and to St. Gerard. They've collaborated in Redemptorist youth and vocation ministry, and of course, many benefactors have supported the Redemptorist mission with their prayers and financial aid. I'm not very familiar with history in the U.S., however, I am aware of some collaborative efforts. That would definitely include the apostolate of the pen and the founding of the Ligorian and Liguori publication, and Wendy gave a beautiful testimony about what that means to participate in that as a lay person. Collaboration with female religious communities has been a big thing in the U.S., sharing the charism of proclaiming good news to the most abandoned, especially through Catholic schools. And there are countless lay partners in the promotion of devotion to St. John Neumann and to Blessed Francis Xavier Zelos. In Canada, Redemptorists and their associates have collaborated in the establishment of some of the first credit unions in our country. The one that I know best is one that my own father was the secretary-treasurer of, Mangan Credit Union in Edmonton. It was the first certified credit union in the province of Alberta, accredited in 1938. My dad was not the first secretary-treasurer. And another well-known one is St. Mary's Credit Union in Saskatoon. And there was the so-called Funeral Society at St. Patrick's in Toronto, where every Sunday, every family donated 25 cents. And that money was saved up, and when anyone died, their funeral was paid for out of the money they had invested in the Funeral Society. That was Father Dan Eamon's idea. Where am I here? Redemptorist parishes in Canada were among the first ones to engage lay pastoral ministers. I think you call them lay ecclesial ministers now in the States. We haven't really started using that term yet in Canada, but it's coming. Already in the late 1970s, the Edmonton province started a mission team made up of professed Redemptorists, including a brother, and lay people. They're here. The Yorkton province has been especially active in partnership and mission with the founding of the Welcome Home and in promoting devotion to Blessed Vasil Veleszczowski. And of course, many lay partners are essential members of the team at the shrine at St. Anne de Beaupré. Current revival. The current renewal of interest in collaboration between Redemptorists and lay people and the revival of partnership and mission is rooted in the teaching and theology of the Second Vatican Council, which Francis made very clear yesterday in his dynamic and exciting presentation. Vatican II brought about a deeper understanding of church and a profound renewal of Catholic ecclesiology. That's evident especially in Lumen Gentium, the dogmatic constitution on the Church, and in Gaudium et Spes, the pastoral constitution on the Church in the modern world. One dimension of that renewed ecclesiology is the new awareness of the dignity and role of all the baptized in the Church and in the Church's mission. As Redemptorists have considered the implications of Vatican II ecclesiology for our Redemptorist apostolic life, we become aware that the charism of St. Alphonsus and the mission of the congregation are not the exclusive preserve of professed Redemptorists. We came to think about and speak of Redemptorist lay collaboration, was the terminology at the time. It was a major focus of the 21st General Chapter in 1991, and it led to the creation of what I think we can call a new category of membership in the Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer, namely lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer. The final document of the 21st General Chapter says, The general chapter establishes in the congregation the category of lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer as an active co-worker and participant in the apostolic life of the Redemptorist congregation. And in another place, lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer constitute the fullest expression of collaboration and participation of the laity in the apostolic life of the congregation. In 1991, Father Lasso wrote the famous Communicanda 4, in which we read, "The missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer, though not juridically part of the Redemptorist community in the strict sense, participate actively in its life. Together, we try to realize the Redemptorist family, which in different degrees of belonging and commitment follow today the example of the Redeemer in evangelization of the poor." As far as I know, that was the first time that the term Redemptorist family was used in an official document. And I think it indicates a new way of understanding the relationship among Redemptorists and their lay partners in mission. In her thesis, Anne Walsh highlights the importance of the expressions different degrees of belonging and concentric circles of belonging. Maybe she'll say more about that. The implementation of all of this in the congregation has been complicated and somewhat tortuous. Not only somewhat, very tortuous. And we're still in the midst of sorting it out. The only example that I know well is my own province. So this is not to say that nothing else has happened anywhere. This is the one that I know. And I thought it might be helpful or instructive to hear about how we have gone at the issue of partnership and mission in the Edmonton-Toronto province. Shortly after the Edmonton-Toronto province was formed in 1996, it was the coming together of the Edmonton province in the west, from your point of view, the west, and the Toronto province in the east. The provincial, who was Father Ray Corriveau at the time, asked me, I was his vicar and part of the council, he asked me to take responsibility for doing something about lay collaboration in our province. The first step that I undertook was a sounding of the province to find out whether there was interest among lay people in Canada in having a closer association with Redemptorists and or in sharing in the Redemptorist mission in Canada. Heather Chalmers, she was a young teacher, I think, already by then, connected with Redemptorists already, a friend of Santo Arrigo's. That was her main connection. She had been on the Redemptorist youth mission team, and I invited her to come with me to regional gatherings that we held in 3 of our parishes across the country. St. Joseph's in Grand Prairie, Alberta, St. Patrick's in Toronto, Ontario, and St. Teresa's in St. John's, Newfoundland. And through those gatherings of people, we discovered that there was indeed interest. So I asked Anne Walsh, whom I had come to know in the meantime, if she would team up with me to go to the places where the local Redemptorist community had invited lay people who might be interested in becoming Redemptorist associates. We began their formation with a weekend retreat, and we provided 3 follow-up sessions to help them form circles of Redemptorist associates. The history of those circles has been very up and down. Only 2 of the original circles are still going strong, in Grand Prairie and in St. John's. The circles in Saskatoon and St. John, New Brunswick, and in St. John, New Brunswick, there is no longer a Redemptorist presence. Those 2 circles are struggling. Efforts to start a circle in Vancouver are looking very hopeful at the moment. And a couple of people have expressed interest in starting a new circle in Toronto, where it has died out. So if all of that works out, we will have a circle of associates in each place where we are. I don't know if I have the sequence correct here, but I think it was after some Redemptorist associate circles got going that the EPC decided to establish a provincial commission for collaboration with lay people. EPC is Extraordinary Provincial Council, sorry. But once the General Secretariat of the 2003 to 2009 sexennium began, using the term partnership in mission instead of collaboration with lay people, we changed the name of our provincial commission accordingly. So we're now the Provincial Commission for Partnership in Mission. Anne Walsh and I coordinated the Provincial Commission until 2011, and since then it has been Anne Walsh and Father Remy Hébert. So the Edmonton-Toronto province has established a structure and developed a kind of ratio for the formation of Redemptorists and their partners in mission. Along the way, we recognized that 3 people were really already lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer. They were working closely with us in the mission, participated actively in our apostolic life. And the 3 of them are, you already know, Anne, Joan, and Bob. And so I don't even remember what year it was, but at some point we invited them, 2003. Okay, in 2003, we invited them to make their commitment, which they did at a provincial gathering. I think it was a chapter meeting. What we still need to do, so we have, some circles of Redemptorist associates and some kind of getting going, hopefully, and we have 3 lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer. We still need to keep working at animating the structure that we have developed and actually developing a program for the formation of partners in mission. And that program will be different for Redemptorist associates and for lay missionaries in the Most Holy Redeemer, because the connection and involvement is at different levels, and the needs for formation are different. So that's about our province. I want to say a little bit about partnership in mission in North America in the 21st century. In 2004, Anne and I contacted the North American units and proposed an interprovincial meeting about partnership in mission. And did every province participate right at the beginning? It doesn't. I don't want to embarrass anybody. So
no, I think so.
Okay. So that that gathering became an annual. In fact, we met twice a year for a while, didn't we?
Yeah. Especially we took on the project with the book.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So that lasted for
2009
till that long. Okay. So for about 5 years we continued to meet. Thank you. And at some point along the way, those gatherings were made more official, and we came to be the North American Commission for Partnership in Mission. It kind of, all that interprovincial collaboration sort of fizzled out after 2009.
Yeah, it kind of died when the General Secretariat died.
Yeah. In 2015, the Conference of North America decided to establish a secretariat for partnership in mission, which Anne Walsh and I co-chair. And we've met once face-to-face at the retreat house of the Vice Province of Ex Repatrium Vice Province in Houston. We were very well received too, by the way. And then we have met by Skype or GoToMeeting or various electronic ways, which have been more or less successful.
Mario's been our godsend.
Yeah. And sometimes there are technological difficulties, and sometimes not everybody shows up. And
sometimes we lose Rodney.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So as I see it, the task is to coordinate the development of partnership and mission in the Conference of North America. We need to get all the units, each of the units, maybe is a better way to say it, working on this and working out together a more common language and approach to partnership and mission. I think now that we're trying to function conference-wide, we have to have a little more clarity than we do about the language we use. I think that's enough. And I served on the General Secretariat for Partnership and Mission from 2003 to 2009. And
I kind of think that your foundation is Redemptorist Associates. And Redemptorist Associates, as we are beginning to understand them in North America, certainly it's the way we have understood them in Canada, but I think it's the way we're going in North America. Redemptorist Associates exist, they come in groups, right? They exist in circles around a Redemptorist mission. Now that could be a Redemptorist house or a mission team or some other ministry of Redemptorists, but they exist around Redemptorists. And really what the connection's about is that they are already out in the world doing things that are connected to that Redemptorist charism. And we gave some examples yesterday. Like I was thinking about Kathy and her work as a veterinarian. No one's going to say that being a veterinarian is a Redemptorist ministry, but the mission is a bigger thing than any one work. And so if you think about her and the work she does with those older folks, grieving folks, around whom that pet is the pet's the door, okay, into it for evangelization. And that's how she sees that. That's the Redemptorist piece. So being a Redemptorist associate feeds her to go out and do that. Let me see if I can pick on anybody else. I'm going to pick on Margie when she worked in government. Right? So Margie worked in the legislative branch of the government of Newfoundland. No one's going to say that's the Redemptorist work. However, the way she did that, and the kind of calmness and the who's being served by this question that she often brought to her contribution to the legislation that was being presented, and her relationship with her co-workers that kind of created an atmosphere of calm in that office, that was fed by her Redemptorist connection. So it's not what you do. That all our missionaries piece is really important for Redemptorist associates, right? So it's that they're fed by the Redemptorist spirit and by their actual participation in the circle. And that it feeds them to go out and be the fingers of the Redemptorist community in the world. Now I'm going to pick on someone who's not in the room and someone I know really well, but I won't tell you his name. One of our associates at St. Teresa's he's never going to be a lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer. He's a gentle soul. He's a member of a bereavement team. He's a member of Curcio. He's one of the singing legionnaires, like these vets in Newfoundland who've gotten together and they go sing for other groups. He really embodies that spirit of welcome and hospitality that's Redemptorist. He does not want any more connection. That's enough for him, right? What he wants is to be fed to do that well. And he sees it as a Redemptorist connection, but he's not looking for anything else. But I'm going to pick on Margie. Margie is looking for something else, right? She has begun to see that her participation in the world, really, she sees it through Redemptorist glasses. I'm going to pick on myself now, because it's probably safer too. So she's our lay missionary in formation, actually. For me, there's been this real relationship with not just St. Teresa's, but the province of Edmonton, Toronto. There's I constantly get calls to come and do formation for other Redemptorist associate circles, or to serve on commissions for the province, to preach missions in other areas, to do work with other Redemptorists. There's something that's a little different than a Redemptorist associate. And I want it. It really is. It's an identity thing for me. It's not that it just feeds me to go back into the bishop's office and do what I'm doing. It actually is an identity thing, and I crave more, not for the sake of the connection, or the relationship with any one Redemptorist. I really feel like I belong to the province somehow, and there's been a lot of up and down to that, because that's not always been an easy path. Because that's not a very understandable path. I remember the first time I went and joined the Redemptorist Youth Mission Team in '96, and I went in to say goodbye to the Old Mercy sisters at their infirmary. Now, I had been one of them years before, and in my mind, I was setting off on my life adventure. And I remember sitting and talking to them around the goldfish pond. And, I thought they all understood really clearly by the end of it where I was going, what I was doing, and that they were going to pray for me. And when I left the room, I heard one say to the other, "Where is she going?" And the other one, now this is not a word of a lie, the other one says, "She's joining the Redemptorists. They're going co-ed." But if you talk about a vow and oath of perseverance, I think one of the things that differentiates a Redemptorist associate and that relationship to a local community that differentiates the lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer is that there's a lot of perseverance in that relationship as we try to figure out what that all means for both the professed Redemptorists and for the lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer. And there's a connection with something bigger than a local community, with the congregation. It's the most analogous thing we have to a professed Redemptorist, but it's not that. Now, what it is, not always clear, but we're on the process. Like Peter talked the other night about being on this road, someone used the word evolving, but that we're always in the process of being founded. It's not like it just happened on November the 9th, 1732, and it's not like it's happened already. We've been founded, but we're always being founded. Any geographic, usually, boundary group of Redemptorists is called a unit, but it can also be, that's a generic term. That can also be a province or vice province, and David talked about that the other night, or a region sometimes. There are all kinds of reasons something can be a region. So like the vice province of Richmond is a unit. The province of Denver is a unit. Right? All right. So then it can be a province or a vice province or a region. Yeah. So within the North American Conference, which is a unifying body, it's not a juridical structure, but it is a body that's put together of all the units in North America to facilitate greater sharing of personnel and resources and allow some movement back and forth, and to allow for common projects. Formation has been a big common project for the Conference of North America. But now Partnership in Mission is too. The big thing to keep in mind when we talk about it as a project at all is that Partnership in Mission is not an apostolic priority. It's another kind of priority, but not an apostolic one. The mission is not to us. The mission is us going out with Redemptorists, us going out together to be the body of Christ, to continue the presence of Christ in a broken world. Right. In North American Conference, then, the units are Edmonton, Toronto, English-speaking Canada, St. Anne de Beaupré province, French-speaking Canada, the Yorkton province, the Ukrainian cultural and language group in Canada, the Denver province, the Baltimore province, the vice province, the extrapatrium vice province, and the Richmond vice province. Have I got them all? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So that's the units. There you go. So let's have a look at some of the documents. David was talking about the history. I just want to introduce you to some documents. We're going to spend more time after the break on the constitutions. The most important one that really speaks to professed Redemptorists but includes the rest of us is Constitution 1. So the whole first part of the Constitution and statutes are about mission. And we're going to look at that more. But let's have a look at this. It's who we are, to follow the example of Jesus Christ the Redeemer by preaching the word of God to the poor as he declared of himself, and we've heard this again and again, he sent me to preach the good news to the poor. So it's in imitation, continuing the presence of Christ. So Constitution number 1 is the first one. I think it applies to lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer and also to Redemptorist associates, right? And I'm going to quote from an article by Father Juan Lasso de la Vega. And it was written back in 2003. So this is what he said. The person who lives amid the issues of society and work has a very special evangelizing mission that only he or she can fulfill, is what we've been saying, right? What is important is that the mission be fulfilled in the Alphonsian spirit with pastoral sensitivity to the poor and excluded in society and in communion with other Redemptorists. It's the beginning of, this is the start of that family language. Statute number 2, which Tat spoke to the very first night, is this. The congregation may take as associates oblates, both cleric and lay. So a diocesan priest could be an oblate, or also, a Redemptorist associate. A diocesan priest cannot be a lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer because he's not lay. Right? So, both in doing so, it should envisage and seek to recruit helpers for our apostolate. They may be either permanent or temporary. But what happened was, as often happens, is that dance we've been talking about, that we've been dealing with for years with Partnership in Mission. The congregation will put this in place, and with everybody's best wishes, best will, we dance back and forth. And so what happened was, it became kind of an honorary title in most units. Not every unit, but in most. And that's not what this is clearly not what that was envisaged to be. But oblates became something other than what's in the statute. And so therefore, the next attempt to recapture that full and active participant in the mission is the lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer. Right? Statute 85 just talks about the need of oblates to have some proper initiation and formation and contact. The same things are going to be true later on for associates and lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer. But what I want to show you is that in the constitutions and statutes, these things were envisaged, but they never came to be in a consistent way, the way we want them to be. In 1991, David has spoken to this. The 21st General Chapter instituted or established in the congregation the category of lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer. Now I'm going to speak about that because there was great enthusiasm that was generated around that establishing. And what happened was that some units ran with it and made or named lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer and never did what the congregation actually asked them to do, register them in Rome. So lots of units had lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer and fuzzy formation processes, or maybe no formation processes, and just kind of rubber stamp people who were, and then never did. So when the Edmonton-Toronto province went to register myself and Bob and Joan in 2003, we were the first ones that were ever registered with Rome 12 years later. So what happened was people took it on the local level and did something with it, maybe, but never did it with the Roman piece. And what that does is, there's a danger in that, and you can see the danger. It makes each province do it. It allows each province to do its own thing, not in communication with Rome, and then it can be much fuzzier, right? You might not know who's doing what where. So the real vision of this was that they would be connected to the congregation, not even to a province or vice province. It's to belong to the congregation. That's what we're working towards now. So we're going to say this is part of this founding process, right? 1992, the general government established the first General Secretariat for Lay Collaboration. And I think Alicia was on that. Yeah. From the Denver province. Yeah. That year, there was a report. Now, just get this. This is really interesting. So this is what came out in the report. Specific to lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer is a closer collaboration in the apostolic life of the Redemptorist community. The very purpose of lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer is to participate in the Redemptorist mission to follow the example of Christ, the Redeemer, by preaching the Word of God to the poor. Their service to the church proceeds from their relationship to the congregation. That's the first time we see it that clearly stated. It's going to get stated again and again in documents from there on. Right? But there's the difference between an associate and a lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer. An associate is looking to be fed, to have that spiritual home, to go out. The lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer is seeking a closer collaboration, and the congregation seeks the same thing with them. It's mutual, right? So in 1995, Communicanda 4 comes out. The title of it is Collaboration Between the Redemptorist Community and the Laity. And what it does is sets up guidelines and processes for the formation of and the inclusion or incorporation of associates and lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer. Good. So terms of office, right? So in a unit, there are quadrennia, 4-year terms. There's a chapter of elections every 4 years. There can be chapter more often, but chapter of elections to, have new leadership put in place and maybe have a new start on some apostolic priorities every 4 years. That's called a quadrennium. At the general, a 4-year period, yeah. At the general level, it's called a sexennium, so it's every 6 years there's a general chapter. I want to look at another thing about Communicanda 4. The first part of the document, and you have a copy of this in your folder, presents general directives and norms for all partnership in mission. The second part provides general norms for lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer. With that, in that document, every unit was asked to make provincial guidelines and norms and to submit them to Rome, I think. I don't know if any unit but ours did that either. But that's a growing edge. We know that already. All right, this idea of a redemptorist family that David talked about. The first time we do see that is in Communicanda 4. The idea of a family. And family language is poor, but it's the best analogy we have. There can be all kinds of other words, but family actually works best. Now, I know there can be redemptorists who will say, but we're not a family. We might live under one roof, but we're not like brothers and sisters. But it's the best analogy we have. Every family has different levels and kinds of belonging. Like my family, we had 8 children in the family. But we had an adopted brother. Well, he wasn't really formally adopted, but he was an only child, so he became our brother. We just kind of pulled him in on everything. And we had people who were less connected than some others. The analogy is good because it's fluid, and families are fluid, and families love. Right? So it is probably the best analogy we have. So the document goes on to characterize a family, or describe our family as having different degrees of belonging or concentric circles of belonging. So when you think about concentric circles, you would say the center is the professed redemptorist, whether that's a brother or an ordained redemptorist or a redemptorist student, the professed redemptorist. And the next circle, lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer. And the next circle, redemptorist associates. And then there'll be others. But those would be like the center of the nut, kind of. Right? So what's a lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer? According to Communicanda 4, it's someone who decides to share the spirituality and mission of the Redemptorist community. Now, that itself, our language has changed and our understanding has changed since 1995. It's not just that I decide to be a lay missionary of the Most Holy Redeemer. The congregation has to decide to take me. It has to be a mutual discernment, right? I can't just present myself and say, David, I'm here. Deal with me. Well, sometimes I do that, but don't speak. The other is, again, this sounds like it's all on the part of the lay people to choose, and that's the problem with the language, but it's changing. lay missionaries and Most Holy Redeemer are those who choose a stable form of partnership that is of collaboration and of participation in its apostolic life. And that's why the unit, the commitment to the unit, is so important here. It's not going to be stable if it's to a local community. There's a lot of up and downs, and David talked about the ups and downs just in our unit. So this, it's really important with lay missionaries that if it's going to be stable, it has to be with the unit, not the local community. And commit themselves, again, the language, commit themselves to carry out the Redemptorist mission as lay people. But the province has to kind of bless that and accept it, right? Or vice province. Communicanda 4 is really clear, too, about how that's to happen. And I think, again, most Redemptorists never read this document, or if they did, just said, oh my gosh, we're going to make lay missionaries and Most Holy Redeemer, which is a lovely and generous thing. So how lay missionaries share the mission of the Redemptorists? It's according to the pastoral priorities of the unit. So my participation in the unit has to be according to the pastoral priorities set down by the unit. Right? So if evangelization is one, I fit in really well. But if I were doing something quite different, we'd have to talk about that, right? So it's according...
Are the pastoral priorities like that one book that you had, or is
No.
it different?
They're determined by each unit, and now the conference is actually working on an apostolic plan for the entire conference. So there are pastoral priorities that are set by the units and now set by the conference. Yeah, right? We participate by explicitly proclaiming the gospel to the most abandoned, not always only by the witness of a life well lived in a redemptorist spirit, but by actually explicitly proclaiming the gospel. Now that might be as a member of a bereavement team, that could be as a member of a mission preaching team, that could be through the apostle of the pen. Those are explicit proclamation of the gospel. I think this is a key thing, that sharing the mission of Redemptorists, the lay missionaries and Most Holy Redeemer, are a stimulus and support to other baptized. It's all about out there being leaven. Right? I always talk about fingers, but it's leaven, right? With the support of the professed community. Now, I'm going to skip that. I think I'm going to skip that too. Oh no, I'm not going to skip that. Okay. The next thing we see is in 1997, and you can see that there were misunderstandings beginning to creep in, because the 22nd General Chapter in 97 says this: we must ask, what relationship is there between Redemptorist spirituality and collaboration with the laity? Do we have a genuine appreciation of the missionary vocation given to all in baptism, or are we simply concerned about getting helpers for our work? We need to develop partnership with the laity, not just on the basis of shared responsibility, but also on the basis of shared faith and spirituality. So things weren't clear, right? Then the same year, there's this, that each decision was passed, that each unit within the parameters of its own culture continue to clarify and intensify the different levels of lay collaboration essential to the effective fulfillment of our mission, and in particular lay missionaries and Most Holy Redeemer. I'm going to skip the Edmonton, Toronto stuff because you've heard all that from David. Then, in 2003, the General Chapter said something else about it, that we value this and that we wanted to move forward. It was just a general value statement, but recommended that each unit draw up adequate guidelines and orientation which foster co-responsibility. So you're seeing different language, right? You've gone from, this is all the lay people asking, to co-responsibility now for guidelines, so that everybody was to draw up guidelines. So that was clear from Rome. Where they were to go wasn't clear. You're right. I'm going to skip that too. 2009, David showed you the blue book. The next major document is in 2009, and it's called Into Communion for Mission. And what it has is a document and study guide. It offers exploration and reflection on communion, communio, and on mission. It includes a really exhaustive listing and description of forms of partnership all around the world, and includes reflection and discussion questions as well throughout, as well as at the conclusion. And there is still an active website for that. In 2010, our North American Secretariat put out a book on living redemptorist spirituality, and we may actually reissue that again. In 2015, we reconstituted the Redemptorist North American Secretary for Partnership in Mission. We agreed that partnership in mission is an umbrella term, and we came up with some bylaws, and we decided, and the Conference Assembly agreed, that we'd focus on formation for lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer and Redemptorist associates, as well as professed Redemptorists. And last year, at the General Chapter, there was a decision passed, finally, to establish an office to coordinate this at the congregational level. And that is being done in the context of a General Secretary for Evangelization. So partnership in mission is being seen within the apostolic priorities, so it's for mission. And other areas within that General Secretariat are justice, peace, and the integrity of creation, Africa and Madagascar, migrant peoples, shrines, so that kind of thing. So that's where we are with documents. It's a long, kind of convoluted trail and a long, kind of convoluted history, but you can see that clarity is beginning to emerge. And the main piece we want to talk about here is that associates, one thing, there's a clear understanding of what they are, and lay missionaries of the Most Holy Redeemer is becoming more clear.